This is Becoming UnDone.
I went into my senior year saying this is going to be the best one of my life because I knew that it was the last one. I just decided that I was going all out and I was doing awesome. It was really fun. And I was looking back going, why didn't I do this the whole time? Why didn't I decide this? It came down to a decision to make this one the best one, right? When you're up against the end of the line there, it changes you a little bit. It makes you just go full out. And it was sad. It was sad for me at the end because those 4 years were the best of my life and I had so much fun. And I didn't realize that I needed to make that self-image shift until I wrote a co-authored book of mine called Discovering Something Greater. And I did my part on self-image. And as I was writing, I came across all these thoughts and these feelings, and I'm going, this is the shift. This is what I had to do is move from gymnastics success to success, right? And it's just the identity that we have, we can't move outside of unless we allow ourselves to. My name is Mary Farias, and I am undone.
Hey, friend, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of Becoming UnDone, the podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. I'm Toby Brooks, a speaker, author, professor, learning scientist. I've spent much of the last 2 decades working as an athletic trainer and a strength coach in pro, college, and high school sports settings. And over the years, I've grown more and more fascinated with what sets high achievers apart and how failures that can suck in the moment can end up being exactly the push we needed to propel us along our paths to success. Each week on Becoming UnDone, I invite new guests to examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. I'd like to emphasize that this show is entirely separate from my role at Baylor University, but it's my attempt to apply what I've learned and what I'm learning and to share with others about the mindsets of high achievers. You know, some guests feel like they've been part of the show long before they ever sit behind the mic, and today's guest is a shining example of that in reality. Mary Farias was there at the very beginning, even before the very beginning, as one of the original 6 panelists who unknowingly helped me spark the idea for Becoming UnDone. A decorated collegiate gymnast herself, dedicated coach, now a transformational mindset mentor, Mary's journey has been one of persistence, reinvention, and relentless pursuit of growth. In this conversation, we dive deep into Mary's evolution from a young girl dreaming of her own gymnastics academy to a D1 athlete, a business owner, and now a guide helping others reframe their self-image and step into their full potential. In this interview, she shares how she navigated setbacks, the emotional weight of identity shifts, and the power of belief in something bigger. If you've ever struggled with letting go of an old chapter to step boldly into a new one, this episode is for you. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with Mary Reiss Farias in episode 111. Today's guest, long time coming, Mary Farias joining us from Arizona. And honestly, Mary, you were one of the original 6 on a panel discussion that ultimately led to this show. So apologies that it's taken this long, but I'm also super stoked that you're here. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into your story. You were always one of my favorites. I know they were all my favorites in different ways, but loved working with you as a student athlete at the University of Arizona. So we'll dig into that. But I always start at the beginning. What did you want to be growing up and why?
Forever, I wanted to be a gymnastics coach. One of my friends and I, as gymnasts, we would write notebooks to each other, and we created our own gym. It was M&M Gymnastics Academy, and we had all these notes back and forth talking about how we were going to run our gym and do all those things. So I really wanted to open a gym and teach gymnastics, and it turned into teaching life lessons, really.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I know you came to the University of Arizona as a decorated gymnast, but not the elite gymnast that some of your teammates, the path they had taken. and frankly, a healthy developmental gymnastics career relative to what a lot of, especially young women, have experienced. So talk me through growing up in Corcoran, Minnesota, and what led to you ultimately becoming a Division I gymnast at the University of Arizona.
Well, I started gymnastics when I was 5, and my sister was in it. She just for recreational classes, and the coaches there looked at my legs and they squeezed them. And they said, "You need to go do something somewhere else." And it was just a little high school program, and so they sent me to a higher level coach, and I started doing stuff there. And once that program kind of closed down, I mean, it was just kind of a pop-up type of thing, but that one closed down, and I found North Shore Gymnastics, and they nurtured the gymnasts as people rather than as machines. And I will always be grateful to my coaches for putting me first instead of putting medals first and putting how they can look good first, right? They wanted us to thrive as people, as human beings, and reach our goals, not their goals that they had for us.
Let me hop in here real quick. Mary's experience in competitive gymnastics is truly exceptional, but sadly, it shines a light on an unsettling truth about the sport. Too often, the culture prioritizes medals and perfection over the well-being of its athletes. As Joan Ryan's seminal book, Little Girls in Pretty Boxes, exposed, this world can sometimes be a pressure cooker of unrealistic expectations, where young athletes get treated more like machines than people. Or worse, horrific accounts of physical, psychological, and sexual abuse have emerged over the years, including the disgusting acts of monsters like Dr. Larry Nassar, and the fact that organizations that were established to bring leadership to the sport were in some instances found to be complicit in the cover-up. The physical demands and the emotional toll have left lasting scars for far too many young athletes. But that wasn't Mary's story, and maybe that's what makes Mary's story at North Shore Gymnastics so remarkable. In an environment that prioritized nurturing the person over chasing podium finishes, she found a place where coaches cared about her well-being and her personal growth. And it not only positively impacted Mary and her teammates, it also modeled for them a healthy and balanced approach to coaching and competing that many would later use in their own gyms. And this is what youth sports should be: a space for kids to thrive, build resilience, and grow into their best selves. Not a factory focused solely on churning out champions. All that said, Mary wasn't just in it for fun. She was a competitor too. And that drive, it was going to take her somewhere. As it turns out, somewhere west. Compared to the stories I've heard from a lot of gymnasts, that is an exception to the rule. Certainly a tremendous thing for you to experience. I also want to be careful. By saying you weren't elite, I wasn't being critical of your skills, but in gymnastics, elite is a level. And so when you came to U of A with a decorated cohort of fellow freshmen, how did you feel about not being an elite gymnast relative to your peers?
Well, that's a great question too, because I always kind of thought I was going into U of A before U of A. I always thought I was pretty good, but I knew I wasn't the best, and that didn't really matter to me. And I kind of walked into that role also on the U of A team. And I think that it was okay with me not to be the best, because that was kind of how I grew up. I didn't mind not having all the accolades. I just loved gymnastics. I just wanted to fly through the air. And when I got to the U of A, I realized I was one of the only ones who still loved the sport.
Yeah, and certainly that's telling. And being a college athlete for a lot of athletes means it's the threshold to a professional career, but that's not college gymnastics, and that's not the story. You don't go pro after you graduate from university. Oftentimes it's in the twilight of your career. And former guest, Bill Ryden, your coach, I've heard him say more than once, he was really in reclamation. He was trying to help restore young women and put them back together after the sport had really kind of broken them down, both physically and mentally. And that wasn't your story. You were a stabilizing force on the team, and I could always tell that you just had a joy to compete. So you competed vault, beam, floor, team captain senior year, but certainly you started to encounter some adversity on the physical side. And we spent a lot of time together as your injuries began to mount somewhere around your sophomore, junior seasons. So talk me through what it was like to encounter that and to be faced with some of that adversity and setback for the first time.
Yeah, well, it was really frustrating. I actually did in high school have a pretty bad back injury. I was out for 6 months. So I had some sort of understanding of what it was like. But you know, Toby, I was in the training room every single day and you were mending me. And yes, it was frustrating because I loved the sport and I didn't like to be at a capacity that I couldn't perform and do the tricks that I absolutely love to do. I mean, the whole point of gymnastics was to do what I loved, and I couldn't. You're right, for one of the first times in my life. And it was really, really frustrating, especially when the season was all that mattered in college sports. Whereas as I grew up in my career pre-college, the whole year meant fun for me because it was all learning and it was all thriving. When I got to college, it was a different focus. Yes, it was focused on team, but the other thing was focused on the competition season, and it was just go, go, go for 15 weeks, and then it was over. And if I happened to have injuries during those 15 weeks, well, there goes my season. And so that was really a hard thing for me to swallow at that point, because that was what was the focus all of a sudden, was the competition rather than just the year-round love of the sport. And so that was the most frustrating part of it for me, was that I didn't get to participate in especially those 2 years that you're talking about. And it lasted quite some time. And I remember I was at Stanford doing a vault and I landed with straight legs and it was so frustrating. And I jammed my knees and I just sat down and I slammed my fists on the floor. And I know I wasn't supposed to do something like that. And I know that was out of character for me, but that was the level of frustration that I was feeling at that moment. I mean, that was really out of character for me, but it was frustrating. It was frustrating.
Yeah. And knowing you and knowing how ever since I've met you, you've just been steady and emotionally mature, even at 19, 20 years old. You were kind of the mom of the team in some ways. And to see you battle through that and to see that emotion bubble up, to me, was really a sign that you were definitely affected by the drain that a lingering injury can have on an athlete. Talk me through those college years and how you grew. I mean, you're away from home. You're a plane flight away. It's not like if you had a bad day, you could just drive back and see mom and dad or the old stomping grounds. What was college like for you in terms of your growth and maturity away from the gym?
That's a good question. I loved it. I liked being away from home. I'm the youngest of 11 kids, and I kind of grew up as an only child a little bit, but there's such a disparity in age. But at the same time, there are 11 of us, and family was really important. It was holidays. It was all of that. And all of a sudden I didn't have that. And you're right, that was a lack of support. My parents actually did buy a house in Tucson and came to watch my meets. So that was nice that I had that in my freshman year. They did my laundry. So that was good. But at the same time, you're right. The other 3 freshmen that year, my freshman year, were all from the same gym. So I came in not knowing anybody, across the country, not knowing anybody. And these 3 were teammates before. And half the team was actually from that same gym. And it was there was a pretty close-knit culture that I had to make my way into, and understanding that I just had to wait a little bit in order to find my place was what I understood. And that was just the way it was. And I think that was a good thing for me, because I could observe and I could see see the intricacies of the people on the team and see how they interacted and see how maybe I could help them and support them in different ways, because a lot of those people knew each other for a long time and they came to me because I was a fresh set of ears. And so I think it was helpful to them.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Your story is different on the front end, but it's also different on the back end. A lot of gymnasts literally limp across the finish line of their careers. Their bodies are broken down from years of competing through. That was not your story. You were doing your best gymnastics as a senior, and that just doesn't happen. So as you see the end of your career nearing, you know that, it's going to be a regional. Maybe we make it to team finals, but there's a date on the calendar staring you in the eye, and that's going to be the last meet you compete in. Talk me through those emotions.
Oh, you're going to make me cry, Toby, because you're right. I went into my senior year saying this is going to be the best one of my life because I knew that it was the last one, just like you said. And I just decided that I was going all out, and I was doing awesome. It was really fun. And I was looking back going, well, why didn't I do this the whole time? Why didn't I decide this? It came down to a decision to make this one the best one, right? But there's that emotional maturity. I still needed some to understand that was it. And when you're up against the end of the line there, it changes you a little bit. It makes you just go full out. And it was sad. It was sad for me at the end because those 4 years were the best of my life, and I had so much fun. It was the epitome of my career because you're right. I was doing my best gymnastics and was putting an exclamation point on the end of my career, and I felt so fortunate that I could do that. So many have to redshirt, but go off on a medical leave, and so I was thriving. I came back from those injuries. And so, yes, I wanted to compete another year. Let's just put it that way. I didn't want it to be over. I wanted to be there another year.
Yeah. So when it is over, I had Care Fry on, friend, teammate, and she mentioned how she went back in the gym and kind of did some psychological closure, did some of the skills that she'd either put off for a while, or it was like a victory lap of sorts where she got to kind of say goodbye to gymnastics. I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it. You saw it coming, but once it came, was there anything you did to transition out of Mary, the Division I athlete, to Mary, the former Division I athlete?
I don't think I made that transition until just a few years ago when we closed our gym, actually. And that's a huge part of my story is now. But I immediately, as soon as I finished up school, I went into a local gym and I ran it. I became the program director of a local gym, and it was great. I was able to bring up kids the way that I was brought up and introduce that to Arizona gymnastics, which it was few and far between in this state. And it was an honor to be able to do that and help these kids that wouldn't have had that otherwise. And so I coached for a while, and then I didn't for a little while. I went to Phoenix and was a lobbyist for a bit, but then I came back and we had our daughter, and I looked at my husband and I said, "Where's she going to do gymnastics?" And so we ended up opening a gym in 2012, and I kept going, and it was my own. So I was really able to focus on the development of the human being athletes, and it was so much fun. But that transition, you asked when that transition from Division I athlete happened. It didn't happen until I closed my gym. And I didn't even realize that I had this self-image so wrapped up in gymnastics. My identity was so wrapped up into gymnastics that I didn't know how to succeed, I didn't think, without it. Everything that I did and was successful in had something to do with gymnastics. The sport itself, coaching. I wrote a book series. It was all about gymnastics. I had a gym, I had a successful business. And so all of that was wrapped up in my identity. And I had to make a major self-image shift in order to realize that that wasn't me. It's just a sport, and it's okay to move on. And I think that's really hard for a lot of athletes to be able to make that transition without some sort of help.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really well said. You're a gifted author. I bought copies of the Gym Rat series for my nieces when they were playing around in the gym. I thought it would be great. So I know you've published several books, and I think our paths crossed again around the time you were considering leaving the gym and doing a different thing, having a bigger platform. And so talk me through that transition. You said a lot of your identity's wrapped up in gymnastics. It's got to be terrifying to consider moving to a bigger platform that is not gymnastics specific. Talk me through some of those inner dialogues or even the conversations you had with your husband to say, this season is over, we're going to close this, and I'm going to step out in faith and do this new thing.
Yeah, well, enter someone named Bob Proctor. He was in the movie The Secret, and I became an actual Proctor Gallagher consultant, and so I'm certified to study his material. But the fact of the matter is the way that we decided to close the gym and the way that I knew that I had to move forward was that in the realm of goal setting, all my goals had been wrapped up in gymnastics. I mean, I didn't even care really that I graduated from college. I know that sounds terrible. I graduated from gymnastics, essentially, is what happened. And when COVID happened, our gym really slowed down, and we were renewing our lease, and we just couldn't make that commitment because we didn't know. We had no idea what the future would bring if we kept going, and we wanted to make it a real thing if we continued the gym. And so we looked at each other, and I said, I need to do this. I need to move forward. We've already done the gym. I need a bigger goal to move forward into. And so I became a self-development coach.
Mary's story here speaks to one of life's most universal challenges, one we've looked at here on the show countless times. But it still bears repeating. The need to move on and embrace big changes, even when they come along with fear and uncertainty. Letting go of something that has defined your identity, whether it's a sport, a career, or a role you've played for years, can feel like stepping into the unknown without a safety net. But as Mary so beautifully illustrates here, growth requires us to shift our self-image, to reimagine not just what we do, but who we are. Navigating change often means facing fear head-on, especially when the future feels unpredictable. For Mary, that process began with recognizing that her goals and her identity had been too tightly tied into gymnastics. By allowing herself to dream bigger and lean into a new and even more ambitious vision for herself, she also stepped into a season of reinvention. And in the process, she modeled a brave and gritty spirit that now serves as a shining example to others, including those she serves today. Her journey is a reminder that while endings can be painful, they can often create space for something even greater, if we're willing to embrace the discomfort of the transition.
I didn't realize that I needed to make that self-image shift until I wrote a co-authored book of mine called Discovering Something Greater. And I did my part on self-image. And as I was writing, I came across all these thoughts and these feelings, and I'm going, this is the shift. This is what I had to do is move from gymnastics success to success. Right. And it's just the identity that we have, we can't move outside of unless we allow ourselves to.
So well said. That's the double-edged sword of high achievement in something, especially that's for a season of our life. And I've heard this in artists whose performance career closes, or I've heard it in military personnel whose career eventually they retire. You've got a schedule, you've got a routine, you've got a regiment that leads to your success. And in that process, your identity wraps around it. And then when that's gone, it's jarring, and it takes time to recognize that same skill set can serve me in a different way, in a different context. And so I have to think, the idea of building a gym and a client base and the business side, the entrepreneurial side of this, that's a daunting thing for you're kind of in Tucson, but maybe not of Tucson. It's not like you're part of the old guard of Tucson gymnastics. You have to build that and create that. And you did. And then to step away from that and essentially hit the reset button and do that all over again on a new business had to be a little terrifying.
A little bit. It was, but I had really great training and I have lots of exercises to do. But I had such good support with, Proctor Gallagher and Bob Proctor. He is an amazing person who really focuses on if you want something different, you have to learn how to be someone different. I mean, I'm still Mary. I'm still the Mary Toby, but I had to shift who I was in my head and in my subconscious mind because I was programmed to do gymnastics. I mean, even when I went up to Phoenix to be a lobbyist, I found the nearest gym and moonlighted each night as a gymnastics coach and did choreography on the side because they always say once a gymnast, always a gymnast, but that's because of this self-image identity. And there's a lot around self-image psychology that we wire ourselves to stay in one particular place. And that's what I help people with. I help them to understand that what you have now isn't what you have to have in the future. You can do something else, but you have to be willing to give up some of that identity. And it is giving something up.
It is, yeah. You can't hold new things in hands that are full with old things. And so I can certainly see how that would serve you well as you move forward. So as you embark on this new venture, you're months in, a couple months down the road, and you leave the financial aspect. We would be remiss if we don't mention that. You've got a steady income. You've got a client base. You've got passionate little girls that love Coach Mary and Coach Mark and everything about TGC. And to close the door on that had to be bittersweet. But then to move to this new thing, were there any times where you second guessed or maybe even thought about, did I make a mistake? And how did you push through that to reach success?
That was hard because there's a gym right down the road I could have gone and I could have been a coach at, and I could have done really well. They really would have been happy to have me, but it would have been so easy to do that or to find a job and to supplement income and things like that. But there's a huge component of acting in faith. There's believing in yourself, but there is action on that belief, and that is faith. And I had lots of leaps of faith in this whole process, because that's one of the things that we teach is you have to act as if you're that new version of you in order for that version to come alive. And so I really, really focused hard on that. And Toby, you're right. There were times when I felt like I wasn't contributing. And there were times when I thought I should just get a job and just stop. And it was hard. It was really hard. And then, but you know what? And I think you find this most often, it's the hardest right before it gets better. Right. And
so
as soon as,
yes.
Yeah, as soon as I said, no, I'm sticking to it, I'm doing this, things started falling into place.
Love that. I think it's a David Goggins where he said to himself, like, this is not a negotiation. Like, I'm going to do this. If we start making for plan B or start considering quitting, we're probably going to quit. You're either going to win or lose, and whichever you decide, you probably will be that thing. And so the challenge is we never know when that success is coming. Like I tell my students this sometimes. If you tell me I have to run 5K or a 10K, and I know that when I step foot out the door, that's an easier thing to do. If you tell me run until I tell you to stop, I don't know how to pace. How long do I have to endure having no clients and no income? Is it a month? Is it a year? Is it 10 years? And it's impossible to know. And so to have faith in yourself and faith in your message, it certainly changes you and grows you. But the beauty of this is you're acting out the same message you're preaching to your clients, the same exact action steps that are going to lead them to success. You are exemplifying. And so did you see how Proctor's teaching in that moment was forming you, and then you're subsequently passing that along to the folks that work with you?
Absolutely. I'm my best testimonial. I have to be. And if I'm not doing the work, I don't deserve to have clients. I just don't. And I felt that even in the gym, I felt like I needed to show up as the person I'm expecting them to be. So if I expect them to be dedicated, I have to be dedicated. And so I do the work along with my clients. And I think it's really important for them to see that you're like you were talking about, there really is no finish line. The finish line is when we're dead. The finish line is then. We don't know when that is. And we have to keep moving forward. We're built for growth. We're built to keep moving and keep growing throughout our entire lives, not just until we're 22 and gymnastics is over. We're supposed to keep growing. And that was hard for me to understand. It was hard for me to figure out how to set a goal that didn't have anything to do with the gym. And so even writing a book was easy because it was about gymnastics. For some reason, it made sense. But at the same time, we have to get to this point where we need to understand and realize that we are meant to grow always. And if we're not growing, we're disintegrating. We have to keep pushing forward. And we have to hear that message from inside of us that says, go, try it, do something. Those are good things. That's spirit telling us to go and grow. And so we need to listen to that and step into who we're becoming. And that was huge for me to understand that. And that's what I teach my clients, is to grow into that person. And it's so exciting and so much fun. And yeah, it's scary as hell. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
So good. I had goosebumps as you were talking. That was just electrifying. I really appreciate that perspective. And there's definitely something to be said. I always say strategic and purpose, relentless and pursuit. Like, plan what you have to do to get to where you're going, and then just execute. It's like gymnastics. If you want to do that skill, there are a number of sub steps along the way in order for you to really be able to do that. And sometimes it means changing it up, and the apparatus is different so you don't die. And there are baby steps before we get to that big one. But the point is, if you don't kind of reverse engineer what success is or what that final outcome is, then it just stays as a wish, and it's not something that you're really actively pursuing. So I love that. So whether it was injury, whether it was COVID as a business owner in a high touch kind of gym environment, certainly that would have been a challenge, to your career pivot, how would you say you're different as a result of the journey?
I am much more confident. I am solid in who I think I am. I know that when I have a desire, it's good and it's pushing me forward, and that it's time to listen, and it's time to say, instead of going, ooh, that's scary, it's how can I make that happen? How can that happen? It means that I really hold on to this idea of growth. I really think that everything in this life is for me to move forward. And I don't know what the finish line looks like yet, because every time I reach something, I want something a little bit more. And so I don't know what that end is going to be, but it's going to be great no matter what it is. And I'm just excited. I think that that's That's the biggest thing. When we have a finite thing like gymnastics and a sport like that, it's, what the end is. And you can imagine what it might be like. And now, of course, I use my imagination all the time and imagining my end result currently, but I know that there's even more. And that is what's so exciting. And I didn't know that back then,
Yeah. Love that word, imagination. As you're talking, I'm thinking the word that keeps popping into my mind is the audacity. The audacity for this young high school girl to think she could go to Tucson and compete in the Pac-10. The audacity to open a new business. The audacity to pivot from that business to a new business. But within that audacity, there's this seed of belief in yourself. And just because you might doubt it on a day doesn't mean you don't believe in who you are. You still know who you are. You know what you've been through. I'm sure along the way, people might have mentioned to you, must be nice. Must be nice to be a D1 athlete, or must be nice to have a successful business. Like you're some kind of overnight success, and this was just poured on you without recognizing the steps that you went through to achieve those successes. What do you say to somebody that says, must be nice, that overnight success? You're so lucky.
Well, luck is not luck. It is a lot of hard work. And in fact, I wanted to be on Bill Ryden's team when I was 13, when I first met him. I met him when I was 13 at a camp, and I was like, I'm going to be on his team and I'm going to get a scholarship to the U of A. And that was my goal since I was 13, and I got it. But I spent 20 hours plus in the gym every single week, and you can't tell me that that's just luck, Sure, there are a lot of people who were better than me that didn't achieve what I did, but that's not luck, that's persistence. And I would say to those people that, you know what, you can do it too. Just pick something that you want. Believe that you have the ability and the worth to go for it, and just see what happens. Go for it.
I absolutely love this sentiment, and it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes ever, albeit from a kind of unlikely source. Before he was the slapper of Chris Rock, Will Smith was not only one of my favorite entertainers growing up, he was one of my inspirations for motivation. I think this semi-famous quote of his sums it up well.
The only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill, right? I will run.
You would not be outworked.
I will not be outworked.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
You might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. You might be sexier than me. You might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, right, there's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple. There's a redemptive power that making a choice has, rather than feeling like you're at effect to all the things that are happening. Make a choice. Like, you just decide what it's going to be, who you're going to be, how you're going to do it. Just decide.
And I think that's exactly what Mary's saying here. Just decide. And then stay true to that decision. No negotiations, no excuses, just execution. It's an approach that continues to serve Mary well today.
Because when we make a decision and go, yes, that's what I want, then make a plan. Like you said, make a plan and just get started.
So awesome. That word worth just sprang, it exploded as you were talking. So often I think we don't deserve that success. And I can work for it, but am I really going to be successful as a coach of high achievers or a podcaster or an athlete? And I think that's a place where a lot of us could stand to do some work and recognize that, yeah, I'm worth it. Yeah, I can invest in this. It might not end exactly the way I would have scripted it, but I recognize that there's growth to be had every step of the way, every day on that journey.
Yeah. Most of my clients that I work with, it is a huge part of it is getting over that worthiness component. And who am I to go for it? Who am I to do this? And it's just really important for us to understand that we're here for a reason, and we're here to grow, and we're here to have the best life we can have. And our duty is to be as much as we can be in this lifetime. That's it. And see how much we can impart on other people, and by our example, really.
Yeah. Well, you've clearly demonstrated you practice what you preach. Tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like today and the work that you do with high achievers.
Well, that's a good question. When I first started as a Proctor Gallagher consultant, I decided that I was going to only have meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, just like set meetings. And I stuck to that, even when you were talking, Toby, about the fact that, maybe I should do some other work, or maybe I should open those days up to more people or whatever. And I said, no, this is the quality of life I'm looking for. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm a homeschool mom. I teach my kid. So I stuck to that. And actually, if you can do something like that and just dedicate yourself to that, that's huge, to be able to say, no, this is when I'm working and this is when I'm not working. I still work on the other days, but the meetings and things happen those days. But recently I decided that I wanted to make room for horses in my life. And so I just decided, I wrote it in my self-image script, that I was going to be at the barn in the mornings. Every morning was barn time, and then I'll work in the rest of the day. Within a week, Toby, somebody asked me, do you want to buy a horse? And I was like, yep, there you go. I do. I made room, and she filled it up. And now I'm actually helping other people with their horses and at our barn. And so it's so much fun. So my mornings have filled up with horses. And then I spend time with my clients, and we have really great masterminds. And then I also provide workshops on self-image scripting. And those are all free. And I help people understand how to, one, what a self-image script is, but also two, how to do it and work with it so you can begin living into that life that you really want.
Well, I will definitely get the links from you and drop those in the show notes. So if for anyone who's interested, you can check that out. I always ask this one of all my guests. I love music and the emotions that it can frequently represent. If we were to watch a montage of your life, what song would you pick playing in the background as the soundtrack?
Ooh, that's a good question, Toby. I should have been prepared for that one. Well, it's got to be something classic rock. I would, one of my, how about We Don't Get Fooled Again by The Who? Part of my floor routine. And also, that's a good title. Don't get fooled by the programming that you've got stuck in your head, right? So there you go. That's it.
Yep. Well, when I say I listen to classic rock, it really was more like Van Halen, like 80s.
They're old and
you were my introduction to The Who. You were my introduction to The Who. And anytime I hear that song, I can see you doing the Shushanova at the end where you're whipping out the pose. Like, you were my introduction to The Who, just like Bill was my introduction to Kiss. Just going to hop right in here for just a second to clarify. Bill Ryden was my introduction to the band Kiss. He's quite possibly their biggest fan ever. Just to clarify, Kiss, the band, nothing else.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
That was part of the process, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, what for Mary Farias remains undone?
Well, currently, I know that I'm writing another book. and that type of thing. I want to own a farm and have my horses with me on the farm. I want to keep going forward and leading by example to show people that this is how you can do it. I'm an ordinary person, I just am. And I grew up on a farm in Corcoran, Minnesota. Nobody knows about Corcoran. And I had big dreams and I wanted to achieve them. And if I can do it, other people can too. So I want to keep dreaming, and I want to keep that open-ended life all the way to the end. And I just want to keep going,
Fantastic.
Toby.
Yeah. Well, you don't look a day older than the last time. Actually, not the last time I saw you, because I saw you just a couple of years ago. But you look like a college senior to me still. So it's working well. You're doing great. How can listeners connect with you and the work that you're doing?
I am everywhere on Facebook right now. It's just under Mary Reiss Farias on Facebook. And also I do lots of teaching on You Were Born Rich, Bob Proctor's book, and it's free. People can come in and start reading and learning about these processes that you can start applying in order to live the life that you really want to live. One of the things I also do is I have this book called How to Study Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and I've been reading a page of it every single day on Facebook. Just spending 5 minutes of personal development does wonders. You can read a page and just think about the page. That's essentially what I'm doing in helping people put it into action. So Facebook is huge for me. It's pretty much it. A little bit on YouTube, but.
Very cool. Well, Mary, thanks so much for joining me today. This is a long time coming, but hey, I think the timing's perfect. Like, this happened when it needed to happen. So thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome, Toby. My name is Mary Farias, and I am undone.
Mary's story is both incredible and inspiring. It's a story of growth, reinvention, and relentless belief in what's possible. From her early days as a gymnast, dreaming of her own academy, to becoming a leader, a mentor, a coach who empowers others to reframe their self-image. Mary's life is a testament to the power of persistence and the courage to embrace change. Her insights remind us that our identities don't have to be defined by what we've always done. They can evolve with us as we grow. Whether it's leaving behind a chapter we've outgrown, stepping out in faith towards something new, or learning to see ourselves in a different light. That path forward isn't always easy, but it can always be worth it. I'm thankful to Mary for dropping in, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. For more info on today's episode, be sure to check it out on the web. Simply go to undonepodcast.com/EP111 to see the notes, links, and images related to today's guest, Mary Reiss Farias. I know there are still great stories out there to be told, and I'm always on the lookout. So if you or someone you know has a story that we can all be inspired by, tell me about it. Surf over to undonepodcast.com, click the contact tab in the top menu, and drop me a note. Coming up on the show, I'm stoked to announce that next week I will be launching a multi-part series on the life, lessons, and legacy of former Arizona Wildcats head football coach Dick Tomey. Up first, I've got an enlightening conversation with former University of Hawaii journalist and author of Tomey's biography, Rise of the Rainbow Warriors, writer Lance Tominaga. Then I'll have former U of A walk-on turned defensive standout, turned graduate assistant, and now special teams coach with the Detroit Lions, David Depp. There will be plenty more where that came from in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. This and more coming up on Becoming UnDone. Becoming UnDone is a Nitro Hype creative production written and produced by me, Toby Brooks. Tell a friend about the show and follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Becoming UnDone Pod. And follow me at Toby J. Brooks on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Check out my link tree at linktr.ee/Toby J. Brooks. Listen, subscribe, and leave me a glowing 5-star review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Till next time, keep getting better.